Shabbos Daf Ayin Zayin discusses the Mishnah, which we just learned previously, which lists various different liquids that people use and what the minimum size of each liquid is to be significant enough that if somebody carries them on Shabbos, he has violated the Yisod D'Oraisa of carrying. So our Gemara will discuss several of the liquids mentioned in the Mishnah, what their share is. We're in the middle of a discussion of wine. Then we'll get to a discussion of milk. We'll talk about honey. We will digress for a while. The Gemara will discuss a number of natural phenomena, what they're used for, why they occur, and why certain things are named what they're named. Then the Gemara will come back to the topic of the liquids and what their share is for carrying on Shabbos, and the Gemara will conclude with oil. Okay. So let us begin. We were in the middle of discussing wine, and we had said that there are two types of wine. Wine, in the times of Chazal, the way it was originally was too strong to drink. The only way that it was drinkable is if it was diluted with water. Now, our Mishnah had said, undiluted syrupy wine, the significant size for that is 1/4 of 1 revius. A revius is the significant size of drinkable wine. And the undrinkable wine, the raw wine, undiluted wine, the significant size of that is 1/4 of the revius, because the way to make it drinkable is to mix it with 3 parts water. Therefore, you need 1/4 of a revius, which you can then mix with 3 parts water and then turn into drinkable wine. So drinkable wine, the Mishnah says clearly the minimum size is a revius. Undrinkable wine, it doesn't say. It just says a cupful. And we had a brisa that says that it's 1/4 of a revius. And now Rava says that you can prove from our Mishnah itself, you don't need to run to the brisa. You can prove from our Mishnah itself that that size is 1/4 of a revius, because the reason for the amount is that it's enough undiluted wine to make a revius of diluted wine. Now we know that that ratio is 1-4. So Abaye says there's no proof. There's no proof from 2 reasons. First of all, it's not always 1-4. Some wines are 1-3. The Gemara Masechas Nida, which talks about deriving the correct colors for Nida blood, which is Tameh, has 4 different types of blood, and one of the colors that's listed is if you take wine from the region called Sharon, and you mix it with 2 parts water. So you see, sometimes wine is mixed with 2 parts water, and therefore it's 1/3 of the total mixture, not 1/4. So how do you know necessarily from our Mishnah that's supposed to be 1/4 of a revius? Maybe it's supposed to be 1/3, like Yain from Sharon. And the second problem, Abaye says, is who told you that the reason for the shear, for the amount of undiluted wine, is because it's fit to dilute with water to make a revius of drinkable wine? If that was the reason, then you're counting the water that you're planning on mixing it with towards the shear. This is undiluted wine. Who said what? What do we care about what you could mix it with at some point in the future? This is undiluted wine. It's not drinkable the way it is. It's not mixed yet. You can't count what it's going to be mixed for. So the reason for the shear, whatever the shear is, has got nothing to do with the fact that you're planning on mixing it. And that therefore it is not the ratio, the amount of wine which is significant enough to mix to get a revius of drinkable wine. That's not what, it has nothing to do with that, because that it's not mixed yet, the water's not here, you can't count that. So Rava responds. Rava says, I have 2 answers to your first point and 1 answer to your second point. First of all, your first point was that in the Sharon wine was mixed with 1 to 3 parts water, 1 to 2 parts water in order to achieve the color of one of the shades of Dam Nida. First of all, that's only Sharon wine. Sharon wine was especially weak, and therefore was mixed with less water, but our Mishnah is not talking about Sharon wine, it's talking about regular wine, and regular wine is 1-4. And the second answer is that your proof doesn't come from talking about making wine to drink. It comes from making wine to get the right color. So to get the right color, it's 1-3. It's 1 part wine to 2 parts water, in which the wine is 1/3 of the mixture. But that's not how you make wine. Maybe even Sharon wine, if you want to make it to drink, it has to be 1-4. It has to be 1/4 of the mixture. That's your first point. Now, as far as your second point, that you said that you can't count the water because it's not mixed yet, I don't understand what you're talking about at all. The point of the shear of the Mishnah is that this is the amount of undiluted wine that needs to be significant. What undiluted wine, how much undiluted wine is significant? Enough to make a significant amount when it is diluted. So that's why the point is that it's significant. We're not saying it's drinkable the way it is. And therefore I don't agree with either of your points. The Gemara now introduces its second discussion about the size for wine. And this will be about wine which hardened. It was left out and it congealed and it became thick. So over here we're going to have a statement of Rabbi Nassan in a Brisa, and a machlokes between Abaye and Rabbi Yosef as to whether you could also prove that Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda agrees to that statement. What did Rabbi Nassan say? He said that the share for this thing is a concise. Why a concise? Well, a concise of solid is the equivalent of a revius of liquid. When a revius hardens and congeals, it becomes a concise size of solid. And the shear for this hardened wine should be a revius. Why? Because we said all liquids are revius. Now, usually wine is a quarter of a revius because you mix it with water. But when it's solid and hardened, you can't mix it with water. So therefore, that's not important. The only thing that's important is like the regular shear of a liquid, which is a revius. And in the solid state, a revius turns into a concise. Okay, the Gemara says that is what Rabbi Nassan says. And now, Rabbi Yosef says, I can prove to you that Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda, the Tana would say the same thing. Why? Because there's a discussion between Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, and Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, about blood that, when does blood carry tumas mace? If it's the blood of a nevela, when does it carry tumah? Now, Beis Shammai says it is not tamei at all. It's always a tahar. This is one of the rare instances in which Beis Hillel is more stringent than Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel says, no, it is a tamei. Blood of a nevela does carry tamah. And Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda says, how much blood? A revius of blood. Why? Because a revius of blood would congeal to a kizayis of solid, and the minimum size to incur tumah of a nevela is a kazayis. So a revius of blood is equal to a kazayis of solid, and therefore the share is revius of blood. Okay, that's what Rabbi Yosef says. Abaye says not so fast. How do you know? Just because he says it by blood doesn't mean he would say it by wine. Blood is a thick material. That congeals to a kazayis. There you need a revius of blood to congeal to a kazayis of solid. But wine is a thinner material. It is more, it is less viscous. And therefore, perhaps, you need less wine to congeal. You need more wine to congeal to a kizayis of solid, hardened wine. But really, either way, Rabbi Nassan could argue on Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda's argument, or not use the same argument, or Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda could not use Rabbi Nassan's share. They're talking about different materials. And maybe when in the other's material, they would not say the same shear. The Gemara now moves to the next item discussed in the Mishnah, which was milk. And the Gemara will have two discussions about milk. First of all, the size for milk is a swallow. The word swallow is gemia. We're going to ask how you spell the word gemia, aleph or ayin, and then we're going to discuss three other words which we were trying to figure out whether they're spelled with an aleph or an ayin. And we are going to need to find psukim which use the word in order to be able to figure it out. The next discussion will be what exactly is the share of a swallow, what does that apply to, what type of milk. So first of all, the Gemara says how do you spell the word gemia, swallow, aleph or ayin. The Gemara says, well, we have the word when Eliezer asked Rivka for a swallow of water, he said hagami inina mad mayim, and there it's spelled with an aleph, so that's how you spell it. Next, about the word garin, which means a pit of a fruit, how do you spell that? So Gemara says you have the words vinigra me'erkacha, it'll be deducted from your value. The word vinigra means to deduct. A pit is called a garin because you deduct its size from the total value of the fruit. The fruit is valuable in its edible part, not the pit. And therefore the words are related. And the word vinigra, meaning to deduct, spelled with an ayin. So the word garin, which means a pit, is also spelled with an ayin. Next question is about coals that are glowing. They are mostly put out, but they're still glowing. The word is oimimois. How do you spell that? So Gemara says we have a pasuk that says, "Arazim le'amamuhu begana lekim." The arze trees are not put out, will not lose their shine in the garden of Hashem. That's a pasuk in the Navi Yecheskel. And over there it says amamu, arazmoy amamu, spelled with an ayin, so that's the correct spelling. Next question is about the word for closing the eyes. That's amtzin. Amtzin. So that's, how do you spell that? So Gemara says we have a pasuk that says oitzim ayin meir ois bara, closes his eyes from seeing evil, and oitzim there spelled with an ayin, so that is the correct spelling. Okay, now you said that the correct size of milk to be violating the Isser D'Oraisa is a swallow. That only applies to animal milk, which people drink. However, human milk has a different share. Human milk is used to mix with a powder called kilor in order to make an ointment to apply to the eye. You could also use raw egg for that, the white of a raw egg. So the size for that's significant is enough to mix into the ointment and to make the ointment. Now, the kilor itself, the powder from the ointment, that's enough that you need to make the mixture, even if you're using the most mixable liquid, which is water. Now the Gemara asks, when we say enough to make the mixture, how much mixture? Enough to apply to the eyes, enough that goes in the eye, or enough to actually put in the eye and including the amount that's left on your finger afterwards? The Gemara says, good question. The Teiku, we don't know the answer to that. The question stands. Okay, now the Gemara discusses the next item on the list, which is honey. And the shear for the minimum amount of honey to be significant enough to be chayav for carrying on Shabbos is enough to put on a sore. So there's a brisa which says it's not on just the sore, it's on the mouth of the sore. Someone says, what does that mean? That means that the entire sore, which is like the mouth of the body because it sticks up above the skin, or does it mean the highest point of the sore but not the rest of the sore? The Gemara says that question will have to stand also. Okay, now having discussed sores, the Gemara launches into a discussion of a natural phenomena, one of which includes a treatment for sores. It's Rabbi Yehuda who's going to list different treatments for different problems using natural phenomena. Then the Gemara will have Rabbi Zera asking Rabbi Yehuda all kinds of questions, first about many different natural phenomena, and next about the names of various objects and why they are called that. Okay, so first of all, Rabbi Yehuda says everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in the world has a point. There's nothing that's useless, and I'll give you a couple of examples. The slug is used to heal a sore. A fly is used to heal the sting of a hornet. A mosquito cures the snake bite. A snake can be used to cure types of blisters, and the spider helps you get rid of the sting of a scorpion. Now, how does this work? First of all, snakes for the blisters, you need to take a black snake and a white snake, cook them together, and rub it on the spot of the blisters. Now, Rabbi Yehuda discusses a brisa, and the brisa contains 5 examples of strong creatures that are afraid of weaker creatures. One of them will relate to what we were discussing earlier. So first of all, you have an animal called a mafgia that lions are afraid of. Mafgia is a tiny rodent that apparently has sharp claws, and the lion can't follow it, and he's afraid of it. The elephant is afraid of mosquitoes. It can get stuck in his trunk. The scorpion is afraid of the spider, like we discussed earlier. The eagle is afraid of a small bird called a snunis, which can get under his wings. And the leviathan, a whale or a giant sea creature, is afraid of the kilbis, which can get into his ear. Okay, how do you see psukim? What's the pasuk for all of this? Hamavlik shoid al az. He causes the weak to defeat the strong. Okay, that's a pasuk in Amos. Okay, now the Gemara says that Rabbi Zera once found Rabbi Yehuda who was standing by the door of his father-in-law's house, and Rabbi Yehuda seemed to be in a very good mood. So Rabbi Zera had all kinds of questions about the world, never wanted to ask Rabbi Yehuda before because he didn't want to waste his time, but now was a good opportunity to ask him. It's not a waste of time, but it wasn't what Rabbi Yehuda would consider to be worthy of discussion. Now, the Maharsha explains that everything that follows has a spiritual meaning, but we will just relate what he actually said. So Rabbi Zera first of all asked, why is it that the goats that are black walk in front of the sheep in the flock? So Rabbi Yehuda said that was the order of creation. First came the dark, and then came the light. Next question, why do sheep have a tail that covers their rear, but the goats do not? Rabbi Yehuda says because sheep give us clothing to cover ourselves. We make them from wool. The goats do not give us anything, therefore they didn't merit having a tail. Okay, why do camels have short tails? Because they eat thorns, and when they stand among the thorns, if it had a long tail, it would get tangled in the thorns. Why do cows have long tails? Cows wander around the swamps, and they need their tails to chase away mosquitoes. Why do locusts, or maybe it's ants, why do they have flexible antennae? Why aren't they stiff like the horns of other animals? This is because they live in trees that are hard, and if they walked around with stiff horns, they would snap off. And those antennae are very important. It's what the insect uses to sense the world around it. As you can tell, if somebody wants to blind a locust, I don't know why he would want to do that, but if he would just snap off his antennae, and then he wouldn't be able to sense the world around him. Okay, next question. Why does a rooster close its eyes by raising the lower eyelid instead of by lowering the upper eyelid like everybody else does? This is because roosters live in a place where there's a lot of smoke, and they need to keep the smoke out of their eyes. Okay, now Rabbi Zera has a list of why many things are called by the name they are, and Rabbi Yehuda says he answers each one that is a contraction of its function, the words used to describe its use. So first of all, why is a door called Adasha? Because it's Derech Sham, that is how people go in. Why is a ladder called a Darga? Because Derech Gag, that's the way you get to the roof. Why is a sauce called a Maskalisa? Because it's from the phrase Masai Tichle. People always wonder when it will be finished, because they just use it as a condiment that lasts for a long time. Why is a house called a Bisa? From the phrase Boy Vasivba, I'll come and sit in you. Why is a small house called a Biksa? From the words Be'aksa, which means a small narrow space. Why is a container that you use to crush wheat in, why is it called a kufta? Because it's kuf v'tiv, turn it over and sit on it. Why are bricks called livnei? Because livnei v'nei, they stick around for a long time, they'll be around for your children as well. Why is a fence made out of branches called hutza? Because it's just a chatzitza, it's just a partition, it doesn't serve any strength. Why is a barrel called chatzba? Because one uses it to be choytev, to mine water from the river. Why is a jug called a kuza? Because it's kazet, just a little bit, it's just a little this. Why is a branch of a hadas leaf called shutisa? Because if you use it for dancing, you look like a shaita, a fool. Why is a container used to wash your feet called meshichla? Because it's mashichula, everybody washes their feet in it. Why is a fancy container used for washing called mashichlisa? Because it's mashichala, because a kala uses it to wash. Why is a small container used for grinding spices? Why is that called chasirsa? Because it's chaser. The way you made it was by removing chaser, a piece of wood, you ground it out, and therefore you had a space. Why is the grinder, the stick that you use to grind, why is it called a buchna? Because it's boy v'akena, come, I'm going to grind you up, I'm going to smack you with this, meaning I'm going to pound the spices. Next, why is a coat called levusha? Because it covers up the embarrassing clothing of a poor man. Why is a cloak called a glima? Because it's draped around the shoulders and makes one look like a goylem without any form. Why is a fine clothing called a gulsa? Because one is galei siv. He reveals himself when he sits down. He rolls up the fine material so it shouldn't get ruined by the floor. Why is a bed called poria? Because people use it for for procreation. Why is a well with no water in it called a borzinka? Because it's zarnaki. It is clean, doesn't have any water in it. Why is a headscarf that the Rabbanan use called a sudra? Because it's soili reyav. It's for the ones to whom the secrets of Hashem are revealed. Why is a palace called a panda? Because a pischadein, that's the door that everybody needs to approach. Okay, that concludes that section. Now the Brisa says that there are three types of creatures that get stronger as they get older, and those are the fish, the snake, and the pig. Gemara now moves on to the next material discussed in the Mishnah, which is oil. The Mishnah said the minimum amount of oil that one needs to carry out on Shabbos to be chayav for the issur of carrying is enough to anoint a small limb, aver katan. So the Gemara's discussion here will be, what limb are we referring to when we say a small limb? So we're going to have the opinion of Rabbi Yanai, Talmidei Rabbi Yanai. Then we're going to have a question whether there's a second opinion, and maybe there's a third opinion. In the end, we're going to come back to conclude like the opinion of Rabbi Yanai, the Talmidim of Rabbi Yanai. So what did they say? The Bei Rabbi Yanai said it's the smallest limb of the smallest child, 1 day old infant, his smallest limb. So the Gemara says, okay, 1 second. Now there's a brayso that seems to say it differently. The brayso says a small limb, it means and these are the words, Ever katan ve'katan ben yema, either a small limb or a limb of a child a day old, which sounds like it's either one, either a small limb of a big person, of an adult, or a big limb of a small person. And the Gemara seems to be assuming that those two are the same. So the Gemara says, no, that's not necessarily how you read it. Maybe you read it as one, the smallest limb of a smallest child, and therefore it fits with the Bei Rabbi Yanai. The Gemara says, okay, but there's the third opinion, because there's another opinion in that brayso there, and that's Rav Shimon ben Elazar, who says, Ever katan shel katan, a small limb of a child. So that's arguing on the first opinion, according to the way you explained the first opinion, that the first opinion was saying that it's the smallest limb of a child, then it comes out seeming the same. So they're arguing or they're not arguing. What's going on? Someone says, no, really, they are arguing, but they're arguing about something else, and neither of them hold like Rabbi Yanai. Really, we'll go back to our first explanation of this brayso. When it said, Ever katan v'katan ben yema, is referring to a small limb of a big person or a big limb of a small person. And those two are the same. That's the opinion of the Tanakama. Rav Shimon ben Elazar, they're not the same. It has to be the small limb, meaning any limb of a small person, not his smallest limb. Any limb of a small person, which is not the same as the small limb of an adult. Those two things are not the same. In conclusion, what we have is as follows. We have Rabbi Yanai, who says it has to be the small limb of a small person. We have the Tanakama, who we're not sure if he agrees with that, or he holds that it's a small limb of a big person or the big limb of a small person. We have Rabbi Nosson that holds that it definitely has to be the small limb of a big person, and that's not the same as the big limb of a small person. Okay, so now the Gemara says, what's the halacha? So the Gemara says, we have another brayso that says clearly like the Bei Rabbi Yanai, and this is actually Rav Shimon ben Elazar speaking, and he says the small limb of a small person, that's the halacha, and therefore that's what we go with.